Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Wyatt Paints, and today I'll be painting a 1/8 scale Raphaël from Creative Geek. I'm using a new camera this time, so hopefully it'll make things a bit clearer for everyone. Let's get started. As usual, I'll be starting with shading the base in Nolan oil, as my primer is doing double duty as my base coat. This is followed by a two-step dry brush of cold gray and stonewall gray. As soon as it matches the other bases, I'm calling it done. Next, as with the other turtles, I focused on the shell, and as before, I based with P3 Bootstrap Brown. I've been asked about my brush choice, and for me, it comes down to using the biggest brush I can effectively paint with, and it being a cheap brush means I don't mind getting a little stabby to make sure that the paint gets in those deep areas. I followed this up with Argach's Earthshade. These washes are intended to darken every crack and add definition, but also to give a lot of variation to the base color, as I'm trying to recreate nature, and in nature, there's rarely something that is one uniform color. Now it's time to dry brush a highlight of Vallejo Desert Yellow. While I try to keep this even across the shell, going a bit heavy here and there adds a bit of character, so long as it's not too distracting from the rest of the model. Looks good. Let's move on. Raphael's skin is next. Here's where I started to see big differences from his brothers, as he has many more scars to address. Also, I wanted him to have a darker tone than his brothers to reflect his brooding nature, so he was given a base in Gunship Green and then a heavy wash in Beltan Green. After the wash, I only gave him a light dry brush of Gunship across his body, followed by a very light dry brush of Goblin Green on his face. That way, he stayed fairly dark. Next, I tackled his chest, starting with Desert Yellow. He had some really deep details I had to get a little stabby again. I took this time to base coat his tummy plate, but I ended up changing my mind on this, so pretend you didn't see that. Next, I gave it a wash of sepia to get those details and battle scars popping. This was followed by a heavy dry brush of the original Desert Yellow to get that shade back under control. Next, I wanted to take care of some of those details because Raph has a lot of them, starting with Desert Yellow and a scar, because lady turtles dig scars. Next, I used Menoth White on his teeth. While that dries, I had enough time to drop some titanium white in his eyes. Even though he's not wearing a bandana like his brothers, I'm not going to do his pupils so that he fits in. Now to finish the teeth, I gave him a wash of sepia to get some definition in between each tooth. Then I used a Menoth again in the center of each tooth to give it a highlight. Finally, I gave him a bit of Nolan oil to line each of his scars to help them stand out. Now to take care of his wraps. Like before, I used a Menoth base, followed by an Earthshade, and then a Menoth dry brush. Next, I treated his knee pads like little mini shells, so I based them in Bootstrap, shaded in Earthshade, and then gave him a stiff dry brush buff of the Bootstrap again. The straps were based in cold gray, given a Nolan oil shade, and then highlighted again with Stonewall gray. The next detail will be his iron plates and his side. Just like Mikey, he's got a base in black and then dry brush with shiny silver. For Raph's classic red, I wanted to keep it very dark, like a blood red, so I based them in P3 Sanguine. Then I followed it up with a two-step dry brush, first with scarlet red, then with vermilion. Here's where I finally made a decision with his belly plate and decided it was going to be metal, just like the ones on his foot. So I basted it in black and dry brushed shiny silver. This was a good time to do his gauntlet shield as well, and as a happy accident, there was a little bit of red still on my dry brush, so it gave it a bit of a rosy tint. This worked out because it gave it a bit of a different look for the metal, almost like it's been stained with a little bit of blood. Next, I used P3 Blighted Gold to get various details that needed painting, like rings, clasp, and his little monogram pin. Then I gave his chest straps a coat of gray. I thought about making them out of leather, but I felt it would be too hard to see and a bit too same sitting on top of his brown chest. Lastly, a step I skipped filming before, the fingernails. A thin coat of leather brown and they're good to go. And with that, Raphaël is done. 3 down, 1 to go. I'm really looking forward to seeing all 4 brothers on my shelf. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to subscribe and like this video. I really appreciate it, and it helps get my channel in front of more eyes. If you're interested in supporting this sculptor and getting some of these great models for yourself, be sure to check out his Patreon in the links below. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.